And welcome back to another episode of the Vet Story Podcast. I'm here with a special guest, Joe Chickerillo. How you doing, Joe?
Doing excellent, man. How are you?
Good. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about budgeting and metrics that we measure. Just to give you an idea what that looks like, I give a talk on how we budget for the whole year as well as the future. But what we do with that budget is everything. And sometimes we need data to create that budget. And this is where Joe comes in. Joe has a very unique platform called Chck Vet. I know that you have a lot of stuff on your PIMS. People don't use it as well as they should, but PIMS, for the most part, can give you some great data if you know how to use it, right? Right, Joe?
100%. It's just usually not super user-friendly or very intuitive to actually get that data out of your own PIM, like your own data out of the PIMS.
Yeah. Now, Chck Vet has a great system. For those who don't understand Chck Vet, just give us a little high-level overview.
Yeah, so Chck Vet's a 5-in-1 platform directly integrated with all of the major veterinary PIMS, and it rolls 5 solutions under one roof. So it's the first and only fully automated practice analytics, online booking, two-way communications, reviews management, and a client portal. Communications is both marketing, it's two-way texting, reminders, and confirmations. Client portal has a smartphone app. The analytics has both custom reporting and a daily huddle for the whole front office team to use. There's digital forms, deposits. It's really kind of an all-in-one system, but they really fall into those 5 categories, all integrated directly with the practice management software.
Right. So it will drill down into the practice management analytics.
Yeah, so the practice management analytics, it's really twofold. We have 2 sort of modules in our platform. One is the custom reporting, or what we call the practice analytics itself. And then there's what we call the daily huddle. So the daily huddle is designed for the front office team to use on a day-to-day basis for 3 to 5 minutes every morning. The office manager and all the CSRs get together and go like, they look at a dashboard and it goes like, how did we do yesterday? What can we do to be successful today? And how do we set ourselves up for success for tomorrow? So for example, it'll say like yesterday you saw, let's say 46 patients. Of those 46, we scheduled 5 of them for future appointments, but there's 37 of those 46 that don't have a forward booked appointment. So you can pull up like a list of everybody that you might want to reach out to get a wellness exam scheduled down the road. A monthly production forecast. Where are we at relative to our monthly goal so far? How do we do on our day-to-day goal, right? Like we did, let's say 16,000 in production. Our goal was, let's call it 12.5. So, hey, that was a great day, right? We went like 3,500 over our daily goal. It'll also show you things like new patient versus returning patient numbers, your overall forward booking percentage, revenue by appointment, revenue by provider.
You go too far, too much. Yeah, now you're going to take away what the surprise is later on. So what you're describing is what I call a scorecard. Okay. Yeah. Now there's 2 types of scorecards. Well, there's 2 premises of the scorecard. Now you've got something called what I call a coach's scoreboard, and then you've got a player's scoreboard. How do you know when you're winning? You follow football. The American football is handball, in my opinion. But do you follow American football? Do you follow baseball?
Hockey,
any sport?
Football, baseball. Baseball. You know you're winning when your score is higher than the other team.
That's it. When you're winning when your score is higher than the other team. That's what the player scoreboard looks at. So your team, or the team in the practices, they look at, are we winning today? Yes or no? But what they don't know, the coach's scoreboard. And do they know it? Maybe not. Do they care? Definitely not. I mean, they don't really care how many clients we saw today or what the average ACT is. They don't care about that. They care about, are we winning? Now, let me just go into that a little bit more. When you have a budget, and that budget is set for the whole year, you're going to use all these metrics, all these numbers, and you're going to say, based on historical data, I'm going to have X, Y, Z in terms of budget for, let's say, payroll for per week, per month, per year. Based on historical data, these are how many appointments I see. This is what my average transaction is. And of course, using all of those metrics put together, you're going to come up with a populated budget for the month, and you times that by the year, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's what I call a coach's scoreboard. What you're describing is a coach's scoreboard. You can give that information to your team. Your team can either care for it or not, which 90% of the teams that I speak to, they don't care about that. They care about, am I going to get paid? Is the patient's being looked after? The patient care's good. I want to practice good medicine and I want to get paid. That's what they care about. And you know what? It's not their practice. I get it. Do we expect more than that? We'd like to, but we don't. But they don't care about that, right? So this is where I use the scoreboard as an analogy. Are we winning? Yes or no? Now, when we create goals and revenue goals, we can't just say we want a $4 million practice. We just can't simply just say we are 3 million now, we want to get to 4, and that's our goal. How do we get there? Using the coach's scoreboard, and I use the sports analogy, how much possession do you have, or how many yards gained, how many shots on target. Now, we might dominate the game, but still lose the game because of a counterattack or because of a mistake that we did. But we look at statistics. We look at these things as a coach, practice manager. We look at how many clients we saw today versus yesterday. What's a year-over-year increase in ACT? What is the year-over-year increase in cost? We use this in order to achieve a budget. Now, without a good budget, you can not be cash flow positive, or you could use what used to be profit is now operating at a loss, depending on what you call loss. So if you had a 13% profit last year, you might have 8% because your costs increased that much, but you haven't set a budget. And if you don't know what your KPIs, industry KPIs is, that could change according to what you're budgeting to come in or what your revenue is going to come in with. So when we use these scorecards, we want to find out how we're going to get from $3 to $4 million. Now, with these levers, I call these levers, these are the high levers. What if we said, if we want to get to $3 to $4 million, what levers are we going to create to get there? Maybe it is, we need to reach a daily revenue of $4,500. I think it's more about the $6,700 a day. Let's call it $6,700 a day. That is the revenue mark that you need to hit in order to reach $4 million a year. Great. Maybe there's 3 doctors. And what is the revenue goal for each doctor? Maybe that is $3,500 for each doctor. If you've got 3 doctors on per day, that is a target times 3, plus a bit more for the sales of the practice that day. Because you've got OCT, you've got food, you've got prescriptions, but the production is different. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
100%. Yeah. I mean, you can't improve what you're not measuring. And you look at things like your forward booking, your retention rate, you look at like what the production by provider and who's seeing the same number of patients and producing more or less. I mean, you have to have benchmarks in place to know what you want to get to so you can build that budget or that scorecard.
That's 100% correct. And I want to make sure I'm not losing the audience when I talk about this. So just let me know if I've gone too far. What I normally say to clients is close your eyes, picture you're on a deserted island. There is no internet, there's no phone, it's just you and your thoughts, but every Monday you get a message in a bottle. That message is going to tell you 5 things. So you want to measure 5 things. That's a high level coach's metrics that you're going to be looking at. These 5 things will tell you whether or not your practice is on track or off track, right? And let's just use some generic ones. What is the sales per day for the practice? What is the doctor production per day? Maybe it is unscheduled appointments per week. Maybe it is the surgeries per week. If you're saying to yourself, I want 4 surgeries per day, well, how many days you're open, you times that by 4 surgeries a day. And you can see if I've done more than or under that benchmark. So if you're open 6 days and you said 4 surgeries per day, that's 24 surgeries that you want to do per week. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. So if you've, at the end of every Monday, that message comes in the bottle and said, hey, we did 25 surgeries. Great, we're on track. But if you did 20 surgeries, I'm like, okay, but what does my unscheduled appointments look like? If I've said that I don't want any more than 5 unscheduled appointments and suddenly I've got 10, I might have some alarm bells ringing. You can have a look at this over a period of, say, 3 or 4 weeks, even 6 weeks, and say, this is now a trend. This is not a once-off. This is not school holidays. People went away for 2 weeks. This is now a trend. You now need to pivot, but this is going to tell you what is actually not working, okay? Maybe if you got 10 unscheduled appointments every single week and your surgeries is below 24 consistently, you might look at your labor and go, maybe I need to decrease people. It's a pendulum, but this is what we call scorecards, coach's scorecard and player scorecard. And I'll get into the player scorecard in a second. But if you're able to look at your 5 high value scorecards, high level metrics, that's right, and see if your practice is on track or off track, you're able to shift and provide assistance specifically to that spot, right? You find the root of the problem. Maybe there's a practice that opened up that you didn't know about. Maybe there is a toxic CSR that is not booking. We can go into different scenarios here, but it's going to give you a level of what is working, what's not working, but this is what you can absolutely affect. You can measure this. Okay. Now, how do we get those 25 or 24, surgeries? Maybe it is for every phone call or for every follow-up that we make a recommendation of a dental, we try to convert. So if you've got I'm not too sure if Chck Vet does this, but I know PIMS do this, that if you have a recommended dental, and you say who got, and I'm using Pulse when I say this, so who got search, how many times did you recommend a dental? Do you have a follow-up on that dental? Maybe in 3 weeks, you say, hey, Dr. B recommended a dental for Fluffy. Would you like to book that in? That is a follow-up to direct call to action. Maybe if we say, if we've called 10, we can convert 2. Like that is a measurement that we can look at. No difference to what you've just said about if we saw 47 clients today, we should have 47 forward bookings. Mm-hmm. Regardless whether it's 1 month or a year from now, we should have 47 bookings.
100%.
Right there is a player scorecard. And we can use a player scorecard to know if we're winning or losing as a visual, maybe 5 or 6 things that these are the things that we're going to work on this year from year over year or last year. So if we didn't have any forward bookings, well, now we can measure it, we can track it, we can have this in real time and say, well, to date, if we've sold 1,000 clients this whole year and we've only had 200 forward bookings, why don't we increase that by 10% each quarter? So it's 40% that we're going to increase this. You have it like on a visual board, people can see it. Are we winning, yes or no? Each quarter, I don't know what that looks like in real time in my math right now, but if you said 10%, maybe it's 220. Is that right? Yeah, it's 220 for the next quarter. And the next quarter after that is another 10%. So it's going to be 240, maybe? I don't know. Whatever that looks like. We are increasing each 10% each quarter. So it's 40% over the course of the year. So your team can look at this and say, are we winning? Yes or no? Now, what I love about the scorecards is you can map this, if you want to an incentive bonus. You can take away the Christmas bonus because that's now a right, it's a given, it's an expectation. Tie it to something that's tangible. Tie it to a scorecard that people can go, are we winning, yes or no? And if you can use that and say, okay, if you hit all your targets and it's an intensive bonus that is divided amongst, I don't know, time with the practice, hours worked, and goals achieved, everyone wins. The practice wins and the team wins. I think that if you were to deliver this scorecard in a way that every single person has the ability to affect that scorecard or that score on that board, that's a team-centric movement. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it too is that, my background is all in like human dentistry before I got into the vet space about 2 years ago. And it's all the same stuff. The primary difference, in my opinion, besides like, okay, yeah, you're dealing with multiple species, right? But like, from an attitude or a motivational perspective, the difference between dentistry and veterinary is that it's going to dentistry because they want to make a lot of money and be off on Fridays. It's going to veterinary because they care about the animals. They care about the pets. They want to do as much as they can. So you typically wind up seeing them working, not just Fridays, but Saturdays, Sundays. They're going out of their way. They're giving stuff away for free. And it's, while benevolent and I get it, what you really are missing from the dental side, and, you talk about forward bookings and all that, is that the entire process of presenting cases and raising that case acceptance is, in a nutshell, sales. And you don't like to think about it as sales because sales has kind of this negative connotation to it. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm selling somebody on a medical procedure that they should get for their animal. But the reality is selling is just education, right? So you're educating the pet parent that this is the best course of action for their specific animal in this particular situation. And the better job you do of educating them, the more likely they are to actually move forward with it. And of course, you have barriers like cost and different financing and time constraints and all kinds of different things like that. There's considerations for how old is the animal? What is their, being blunt, like how long are they planning on hanging on to that animal? If you Googled sales process, here's what you do. You go over this information, you present the options, you get them to do the thing that you want them to do. That's what it is. That's the thing that I think is missing most from the veterinary world in general that seems to be kind of ubiquitous in the dental space. I think it's something that we could learn as an industry from the dentist about. You don't walk out of the dentist's office without having your next appointment booked. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I've never had that. I've always booked out with a forward booking. It's something that I didn't understand ourselves 10 years ago when I got in this industry why we didn't do it. So we made it a point that every single person walks out with a forward booking. And I don't care if it's a year in advance. I had a lot of pushback. I'm sure you hear that a lot. We don't know who's on. I don't care. The appointment's with the practice, not with the doctor. And that's what people don't understand. Is that we don't know who's working. Don't care.
Right.
The practice is working. The practice is open. The practice is going to see the pet. The doctor who
and the people that have a forward booked appointment are significantly more likely to show up for that appointment. And even if they can't make it at that time, they're statistically way more likely to just reschedule it. But you still have them on the books. You move it a little bit, you're still getting them. Whereas if you don't do that, a practice that doesn't do that isn't getting the majority of those patients. And to your point about the scorecard, this is one of those things that, you talk about it to any vet practice, like, oh, well, you got to do a better job selling. Like that feels icky. That feels to sell people on stuff, right? But if you can frame it, I mean, which is, you say framing it, but it's literally what it is. You're educating the pet parents, right? But you need to give them the actual criteria,
like you're selling the compliance.
To work at. Here's your specific goals. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's how we help more animals. This is us doing better, more and better veterinary medicine.
Yeah, and you're selling the compliance. It's like, can we, Fluffy needs X, Y, Z. This is what it looks like. So when we talk about, compliance, we are selling compliance. Now, when we talk about a Fluffy needing X, Y, Z, you are not trying to sell a client or upsell is probably the word what I'm looking for. You're not trying to upsell a client. You are selling the best possible medicine for Fluffy. It's a compliance thing. Fluffy does need its booster shots or vaccines. Fluffy does need a dental cleaning at least once a year. I mean, Jesus. Do you need a fecal? Well, yes. Is it bad medicine not to do a fecal? No, it's the best medicine because that way you get to know what kind of antibiotics that you need to provide Fluffy. But this is what we're trying to then say is that we're not trying to sell them. We are looking for compliance. So what is the compliance rate now? It turns into what is the retention rate? When did we last see Fluffy? Oh, we haven't seen Fluffy in 18 months. Well, where's Fluffy gone for his boosters? Where's Fluffy gone for parasite control? What does that conversation look like? Education, which is compliance. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, that's one of the key metrics that people, not to be like self-serving, but one of the things that people like about Chck Vet a lot is like having that reminder compliance, being able to look at those things like fill rate, forward booking, all that type of stuff. But it's wild to me how many practices don't at all, or aren't really aware that they should be looking at those types of things. Like they understand at a conceptual level, yes, we should be forward booking. Yes, we should make sure that we are providing the best care possible and following up with people, but there's no mechanisms in place to get them to do it. And it's very hard for, oftentimes in my experience at a vet practice, there's usually one person, whether it's the doctor or a partner or the office manager, a lot of times a CVPM, I tend to find this a lot with them, that they kind of have this idea. They know what things need to be done, but it's then not easy for them to really convey that to the whole team with actionable data and kind of things like touch points that you want to hit every single day. That's where I think the biggest problem comes into play with the practice management software. They all technically have the data, but how do you get that data out? How do you track it effectively? How do you put it in front of your team in a way that they can go through on a day-to-day basis and making sure that they're helping you reach those goals?
Look, it's exactly right. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head in terms of these well-astute CVPMs. They have the data. They actually know what they need to be tracking, but how to track it, how to get the team bought into tracking that and why it matters. That's the disconnect sometimes that I found. When we talk about having the ability to have data, what we do with that is crucial, and how we use that as levers to get to our goal. Simply having an ultimate goal is not enough. We just can't say we need to do more, we need to do more. What we do, the levers that need to be turned and toggled to get there, right? That's the analogy I'm using, is what is our levers. I often speak to clients that when I ask them, what is the scorecard? How are we going to get there? This is what we measure in order to get there. And this is how we're going to measure it. And then we distill that conversation into a player scorecard so the team can further understand what's a much simpler scorecard, I should say. Most clients that I have usually use the player scorecard and incentivizes that scorecard because everyone wins. I'm a very big advocate for taking away the Christmas bonus because, as I said, it does become an expectation. People do rely on it. And a lot of the people that I get to see say, look, I can't keep affording to pay this Christmas bonus. Last year was X and I feel obligated to pay more because it's another year that they've been with the company. Why can't we separate this out? Why can't we say that this is an incentive bonus? This is a retention bonus. Why can't we do that? Think outside the box rather than just a Christmas bonus. It becomes an expectation. I'll tell you a story. I think it was 8 years ago now. That's probably when I did stop the Christmas bonuses myself. A team member came to me and said, hey, I need to buy some presents. Can I get my Christmas bonus in advance? I was like, wow, that was an expectation that they are going to get something from me, right? And it put me on the spot because I don't even know how much I'm going to be given. What if we didn't do well at the end of the year? Like, what if we didn't achieve the goals that we were meant to achieve? But back then, I didn't have a scorecard. I looked at my bank account and said, do I have enough money to give everybody? Things have definitely changed now, but I felt emotionally blackmailed. There's not a lot of things blackmailed. I felt emotionally, help me out,
Obligated?
Joe. Obligated, yes. Thank you. I felt emotionally obligated to give probably more than what I wanted to give when I looked at it overall and say, okay, I've got, X amount of budget to give. Maybe I would have given $500. Now I would have to give $700 because I felt obligated to give her more because she's asked for an advance and she's right in front of me. I didn't have that conversation about what that looks like. Now it's very different. I stopped that then. I think after that year, I stopped that, if I'm not mistaken, and said, okay, we're going to change to retention bonuses. And I built it all out and used the scorecard method. As I explained, this is the goals. This is how it's going to be measured. This is why and how and who. Because as I said, I've got those 3 tiers. Now there is not a single complaint. This is the hours I worked. This is how long you've been with the company. And this is the goals met. That is very clear cut.
Well, it removes the emotion. It removes any questions. It removes any ambiguity about it. It's like, hey, here's the goals. Here's what I'm trying to do as a business owner. Here's what helps us help more pets. These are the goals that get us where we want to be. So if you hit more of these goals, then you get more of an incentive. Again, not to, call back to the sales thing, but that's part of the sales process. That's that's the critical component when you're trying to build a cohesive strategy for any business. I don't care what type of organization, but you want to always incentivize people. And I think you kind of touched on this so that they're always pulling in the direction that the company wants to go in. If you build it where it's mutually beneficial, where, okay, you're incentivizing them to do the thing that makes the company do better, well, then you're by default encouraging better performance for the entire company for whatever that goal is. So you have to structure it that way, and having something like a scorecard or the ability to look at those metrics on a day-to-day basis, it just keeps it so cut and dry. It removes the emotion, it removes the ambiguity, and it removes the sort of emotional obligation to feel like you need to just do something kind of your own accord that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of otherwise. It's already, here's the goals, here's the guidelines, here's how you get the most benefit for yourself.
Fully agree. So no, I hear that. What this scorecard is meant to do is meant to complement what the bigger goal is. Now, if that bigger goal is to increase revenue, profitability, maybe it is adding more people, maybe adding more doctors or expanding the current practice into a bigger footprint, you're going to need money for that. And you're going to need volume to support it as well. So creating the scorecards that complements the bigger goals is everything. And you said it yourself. If the team is driving or rowing, whatever methodology you want to use, in the same direction, on the same page as a clinic practice, everyone benefits naturally. It actually sets clarity. This is where we need to go, and this is how we're going to do it. When everyone understands that, everyone knows what the role is, everyone knows what the goals are. If we're not on the same page, we don't know what our purpose is. Our why is, in most practices, here to help the patients. Our how is delivered through compliance. Our how is delivered through the standards of care. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So if we are all on board on how we're going to do this, then the byproduct is that we reach our scorecard goals. And if we reach our scorecard goals, then in theory, we should be reaching our coach scorecard goals. Yeah, it keeps going up the chain.
There's a balance in, again, going back to the veterinary space being a little bit different than my experience with dentists, but there's this overarching feeling of wanting to do this out of the benevolence, of your own heart. Yeah. And there's a huge, that can't be overstated how important that is. But inspiration is good for morale, right? Inspiration is good for team building. Inspiration is good for client service and the general attitude and the vibe of an office.
Yeah.
The carrot is what actually gets you the results that you need to take the practice to the next level. And again, if you keep in mind, so the way that I would generally view this is you look at what the goals or the vision or the mission statement is of the practice, right?
Mhm.
Every decision that you make as a practice needs to drive towards that goal. And if it doesn't, then you either need to change that decision or you need to change your values, your mission statement. Like, what
Yeah.
is it so if your mission statement is to do the most and best veterinary medicine, you need to have a profitable practice to be able to do that, right? You need to have a successful business to be able to pay your employees and compensate them. You need to have the ability to purchase the best medication and supplies for the office. And in order to do that, you have to have enough money, enough profit coming in, low enough overhead, enough of a margin to be able to support all of that, which ultimately gets you to the end goal of being able to help more pets. That's the whole thing. So 100% agree with you. Like, inspiration is invaluable, but it doesn't discount the need for that carrot.
That's right. And you've actually given me a segue into the budget system that I actually put together. You said, yes, we want to make sure we have enough money put away for these equipments, enough money to put away for the growth or giving team members an increase in wage and things like that. You can build your budget in any way you like it to be built, as long as your 5 main categories are paid: your COGS, your inventory, your payroll, your loans if you have them. These things, they all cost money, as much as we like to think that they don't. But if you said that if you want to be benevolent, you can actually put aside something for that, right? Let's just say that 1% of revenue or 2% of revenue goes towards your own benevolent angel fund. If that's your mission, build it into your budget, right? If you're a $2 million practice, put 2% aside if you can afford it. But you won't know until you build out your whole expenditure for the whole year. And what do you need for that? What do you need in order to build a budget, Joe?
You need to measure.
You need data.
You need to be able to see what's going on.
That's right. So without that data, you can't build a budget that's detailed, that this is my average spend across the whole year in this category, in that category. Because once we do, and we're able to find out what we can afford and what we can put aside, you'll know what's left over. And what you do with that leftover money is considered profit. But if you want to divide it, that pie, you want to divide it into different categories, you absolutely can and build it in. And let me tell you a secret. You can actually build in profit into your budget. Did you know that? You can.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I use the budgeting system as like the end goal. But what we need to understand what our goal is, as you said, what our goal is, and we distill it down into these two different scorecards to achieve that big goal. But that big goal is the budget is going to be derived from the big goal, right? Because we know what our true budget is. This is another thing which we can get into a bit more of a rabbit hole. But 90% of the people that I speak to do not know what the true cost is of one single team member, like the true cost. They think they get paid $25 an hour. No.
Right. It's not factoring in overhead. It's not factoring in the electricity. It's not factoring in the extra time, payroll, and everything else.
Yeah. We forgot about the 401k. We forgot about the CE allowance.
Insurance.
We forgot about health benefits if you offer it. We've also forgot about uniforms.
Yeah. Also, uniforms.
These are all costs associated to a team member. You need to know what this is. And even if they don't use it, what if they did? You still need to put money aside for that. Right. So if you are able to find out what that all costs for one person, obviously you can do the same formula for everybody that you have. That is actually the true budget for your payroll. I hear a lot of, I'm at 20% payroll. I guarantee you everyone's at 20% payroll before they factor in everyone that I've spoken to so far is at 25 plus. Once they factor everything else, and people are like, bullshit. Trust me, do the numbers. That's what they are. What I find a lot as well, which is very interesting, everyone looks at gross. That's the number we should be looking at. You need to find out what the number is after tax. That's the number that you've got to distribute, because I know some states don't have sales tax, which is fine. I come from a country and province that has high sales tax, so we don't get to see that money anyway. But that's the number that you really should be deducting before you look at anything, because if you don't, you're going to be 20% of gross, which is actually 24% of gross, because you forgot to factor in that, tax is taken out. Now it's lowered by a certain percentage. Does that make sense?
100%, buddy. I'm born and raised in Chicago, man. We got some of the highest income taxes.
Yeah.
So yes, right there.
right? But people don't understand this. They don't understand the concept. They forget that these things exist. And it's people like myself and a bunch of other people's jobs to bring forward that, hey, these are not the numbers you should be looking at. And when I get these numbers and say, oh, this is our budget, and like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And this is why, take their numbers and plonk it into the system. And it's like, oh, I did not realize that's why I'm not cash flow positive most months. It's like, that's why. Right.
Right.
So, and I brought you here for a specific reason. Yes, you're an expert on Chck Vet, but Chck Vet, you can grab data from Chck Vet that absolutely complements this system, as we say. Because I ask for things like, what is your average ACT over a period of X amount of time? I use the DVM budget system, and I go, how many clients can you see per day without surgery? Your system can do that. Right? Your system can say, this is how many people came in per day. This is how many surgeries that we had today. When I asked the question, how many clients do you see per day, excluding surgery? I know, or they know, that I do X amount. I'm able to use that number, plug it into my system, and then I'd be able to give them probably within a $5,000 bubble of ups and downs of what they can afford every time that they want to hire a doctor. And they go, this is what my budget for a doctor is, right? And I'm saying this because I know that Chck Vet does have these metrics in place that you can plonk at ease, correct?
Yeah, essentially anything that exists in the practice management system, we can query and build a report on. So the most common things that we look at are things like revenue, accounts receivable, fill rate, show rate, invoice count, and how many are unpaid, new client numbers, returning client numbers, how many are unique versus multiple animals for the same person in the same time frame. That's usually the high level stuff. The other things you can do with that data, though, are drill down into it and see what constitutes all that. So for instance, you could look at revenue by provider or by operatory, depending on how you book your appointments. You could look at trending data over time. So one of the things I always recommend people look at is like, let's look at your new client numbers over the, let's say the last year, and then look at them after a couple of months after we've turned on online booking and see how much they've gone up, right? So there's little things that this can give you some insight into. And what you're talking about, also possible, looking real granularly into some of these more granular production numbers, right? But at a high level, even a practice that's not super well versed in the business side of all that with the scorecards, it typically can give you some visibility to make some very easy decisions to lower some overhead and increase production across the board.
No, I understand that. I love that it has all that functionality.
But it's because we already built this in the human dentistry space back in, we started it back in 2016. At the time, all we were doing was online booking. As of this day, that system is actually the number one most used third-party client communication software in the dentistry space. And this is a completely separate company. It's not related from a business perspective. It's just some of the original people, but using the exact same structure. The back end of it is built exactly the same. So it's online booking, the analytics, and the communications. And we just built it out more for the vet. But yeah, I mean, you could replace several other systems. Most often we replace 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. And there's even one group practice, a pretty large group. They have if I remember correctly, 69 offices that we're using 5 different systems to do what we're doing. This piece from that one, it's roll it all one roof. But ours just does more all under one roof. We also usually save a ton of money for practices that are consolidating. That's another one of the value adds. But the analytics and the online booking are 2 things. The way that we do them, nobody else actually has those. The daily huddle is something nobody else has. The analytics, there's a couple other systems that do have some analytics built into them, but in one of them, it's kind of more of an API where you have to sort of build it out yourself. In another one, you get kind of their standard set, but if you want to build out anything custom, it's like $5,000 for each report you want to build. So, ours just pulls all in real time directly out of the software. And again, depending on who you're talking to, when it comes to our clients, and this is purely anecdotal based on people I've talked to, independent practices, solo practitioners, they usually don't have any visibility as it stands. When they're coming to us, they don't have any visibility and usually don't have any idea of the things that are possible if you knew what to look for and how to get it out of the system. So it's usually kind of a brand new concept. That's why I say, if you're not even getting super granular, just knowing that okay, we've got 3 doctors and 2 of them are producing around the same amount, but the third is either, let's say, producing way higher or way lower. What are they doing? It allows you to just have better visibility and make better decisions. Same thing with the online booking. You increase your conversions, you increase your after hours booking, you save a ton of time for the front desk, and all of that, you can see through the analytics. When you get into the group practices, people that have, let's say between 5 and I'll call it 25 offices, you usually are working with a group that's focused on growth, on scalability, and automation and efficiency. And there's somebody that's responsible for marketing. There's somebody responsible for operations at a high level. So those are the people that are usually looking for more of the data that you're kind of working with. And then of course you have the consolidators, which are kind of strong arming everybody across the industry. The cool thing that I like about our platform, we can work with anybody. It puts everybody in the same playing field. You have an independent practice that's ever looked at this before. They don't know. They never had the time to delve in and get it. Hey, we're connected into the system. It produces the report, this scorecard, so to speak, right there on the spot for you. You're working with clients that you have this scorecard for. I'm not sure if you have like a template for what this scorecard looks like.
Yeah.
Let's say we're always looking for the same type of stats. We can pipe that into our system. Anybody that you're working with, we can just tie in and pull all that data out for you automatically. They don't have to do any work. So it kind of puts everybody in the same playing field as far as being able to compete with one another in the veterinary industry from a business perspective. Obviously, we're all here to help animals, but you need to be a profitable practice in order to be able to help animals. So this helps you do that.
That's true. That's very true. Joe, thanks for coming to chat with me on this. I mean, as I said, I look to you because we both speak the same language in terms of metrics. You do this with Chck Vet, and I wanted to bring you on because I use your tool. Other people use your tools, and I always found value in that. When I ask my team leaders, hey, what is the compliance on X, or how many people did we see last month? I'm able to get that data instantly. There's a report. I'm sure there's PIMS out there that can get that report, but I know that using some systems that I have in the past, I have to generate 2 or 3 reports to get to that one source.
Yeah,
I don't have to do that.
All the data. You've got multiple offices, so you export all that data, put it into a spreadsheet, layer it on top of Power BI, and run like you got to run your own formulas. That's one of the nice things. Again, selfishly speaking, about our platform is it just does it all for you. It's pulled in real time. We build it out kind of one time, and then it just runs whenever you want to open it up. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on here. It's always good chatting with you. I think we could just go for hours and hours.
Yes, we can talk for hours. It's never a dull moment when we're at the bar at conferences. So I thoroughly enjoy speaking with you. Thanks very much for joining me today, Joe. Until next time.
Thank you, sir.
See you, bud.